Hello, and welcome to Catholicism in the Car. My name is Parker Zerbal. Today I was listening to more audiobooks. I finished the audiobook of Lucretius's book on natural things, I think is what it was called. For some reason I keep forgetting the name of it. I don't know. I think the Latin name is De Rerum Naturale or something like that. And then I read, hold on here. And then once I finished that, I went on to listening to the Enchiridion. The English translation of that is usually the Handbook by Epictetus. He basically has, I think it was 50 different sayings almost. You could almost say proverbs. I'd probably say 50 proverbs for how to live. And what's interesting is that Epictetus lived during the middle and late part of the first century. So at like the same time as St. Paul, St. Peter. And Epictetus would have, he was a Greek, but he grew up in Rome and spent most of his life. And so, I mean, Rome was and is a huge city, so it's, not likely that they knew each other, but it's just interesting that they would have been in the same area at the same time. And they said there were certain things that struck me, and I was like, wow, a lot of this is quite Christian. I mean, of course, Christianity is built upon the foundation of natural morality, natural philosophy, and natural virtue, but it supernaturalizes those things. It brings them to the level of God. One of the things, so Epictetus was a Stoic, and they're generally known for their apathy, you could say, and also like their ascetic rigor. So they were often known for denying many things of the world, often going without bodily pleasures for long periods of time. They were a very, you could say, intellectualist tradition, kind of think of Spock. That's like a caricature of the Stoics. There's a reason why we say when someone's being stoic, it means that they're not showing emotion. So Spock is from Star Trek. You could say about Spock that he is stoic. And I heard a little bit about Epictetus. There was an introduction before the book, and so apparently he grew up a slave or a servant in Rome, and pretty much lived a very unknown life. And it was his scribe that basically wrote everything down. It was a friend of his who acted like his scribe, and Epictetus never actually wrote anything down, but this friend of his did for him. And he really extols people to live a naturally virtuous life, and it's quite beautiful. He doesn't give a whole lot of reasonings for the things that he says. I mean, again, they're more proverbs than anything else. But it was pretty neat. He really emphasizes both intellectual humility and what I would probably call something like social humility. Not flaunting your accomplishments before other people. Now he says it mainly because it'll just make people mad at you. And he says to rebuke those that do that flaunt their accomplishments around others, that boast. He also says, before you're married, try to live purely. And if you can't, he kind of says, from what I remember, he kind of says, if you can't, you can't, but try to. And then if you do end up living purely, don't boast about it, because then it kind of ruins the whole reason of you doing it, trying to be pure in the first place. It makes me wonder if he would have heard somebody like St. Paul or St. Peter preaching, and he kind of internalized these things. Now, I haven't really read any other Stoic writings. I think like Marcus Aurelius is considered like the first Stoic, I believe. But I haven't really been able to find many of their things in audiobook form. Epictetus was the only one I was able to find. So yeah. And then I started on the Enneads of Plotinus, and I just listened to like one of the first Enneads. I don't know how to pronounce it, Ennead, because there's also the Aeneid, which is by Virgil. It's his poem. But then there's the Enneads, Enneads, I think is how you spell it, by Plutarch or by Plotinus, and then it was described by Plutarch, I believe. And I've always heard Plotinus had, and the Neoplatonic school had a lot of influence on many of the church fathers, because to a large extent Aristotle, as far as I know, was kind of lost, or at least he wasn't really considered as much until he was revived by Avicenna and by Averroes, and then later by Thomas Aquinas. So during that period of time, between, I don't know, 1st century AD until when would Avicenna have lived? I think in the 700s, so the 8th century. Avicenna was the 11th century. So it seems that basically for a whole millennium, Aristotle was kind of lost, or at least just not considered, not read very widely. It would appear, because he doesn't pop up in many major philosophical writings up until Avicenna. And I want to know more about the story about how he was rediscovered, and who preserved his writings. I wonder if we know that, who preserved his writings over that millennium. And I might be speaking a little out of turn here. It might have been a lot less time than a whole millennium, but I'm speaking from my understanding as it is right now. And hopefully later I'll learn a little bit more about the history there. So anyway, I've been excited to get to Plotinus, because I've been very influenced by those who were influenced by Plotinus, particularly Augustine, Boethius, and Saint Bonaventure. Saint Bonaventure had a really large impact on me, and still continues to have a very large impact on me, at least from my theological outlook. So yeah, this little bit of Plotinus that I read, or that I listened to, so far it was his bit on virtue at the beginning of the first Ennead, and he talks about like virtue assimilates us to divinity, which is a very Christian, at least classical Christian view, is the view of divinization, that we are divinized. Now the difference is with Plotinus, it's you gain virtue, which makes you divinized. It kind of seems like it's more of what's the guy's name? I've had so many names filing through my head now. I'm not able to recall the obvious ones. The heretic that said that we're able to be saved by our works, or at least that's attributed to him. Oh, wow, that's bad. Anyway, the difference between the Christian point of view and the Platonic point of view is that it's only by God that we are divinized. It's not by our works. It's not by our virtues per se of themselves. We grow in virtue because God gives us grace, ultimately. I mean, we can grow in natural virtues by ourselves, but those do nothing unto salvation. Yeah. So, anyway, there's some more thoughts. Thanks. Real quick, please feel free to subscribe to any of my podcasts on any of the podcast players. Find me on YouTube. Please subscribe. Like me on Facebook, like the Catholicism Card channel on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're all there. Catholicism Card. And then I also have a Patreon account if you wish to support what I do at this podcast and this YouTube channel. And you can also support us on Anchor.fm. There's a support button there you click on. I also have links to all this on my website's support page at www.catholicisminthecar.com.